Welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I'm KristaLyn. And I swear I'm grounded. I'm totally grounded, but I'm so excited about what we're talking about today because of all the synchronicities that go along with it and just how literally the entire year for both of us has led up to this too, with all the themes of the things that we've been reading and working on. So super excited to share this with everybody today.
Yeah, we were both like, before we even started recording, we're like nerding out on all the ways that this topic fits into like right now and why we're doing it at this time. When we suggested this topic, we did not know of any of these synchronicities that I'm sure we'll bring up very adamantly as we talk. But now we do, and it's pretty awesome.
So what is the topic, right? We're not going to tease it too much, but it was funny. A couple days ago, Emily was like, hey, for this episode, why don't we talk about the divine feminine? And I have to tell you, initially, I was like, the divine feminine, we've only been talking about that since like the 80s. But then I realized that I'm literally reading a book about the emergence of the divine feminine. And it's, at this turning of so many astrological cycles, and maybe not the age of Aquarius, but an age or an era of Aquarius that's coming in right now that's going to last like 200 years in and of itself. Like, it is relevant, it is important. And right here, right now, this moment really is bringing it up. Even with the astrology that's happening the day after we release this, it's relevant. And even a couple days after that with the vernal equinox. I mean, this is apparently the right time to talk about it. Yeah,
100%. And I want to make sure that we say this right up front. We are talking about divine feminine energy, which is in every single person. We're not talking about gender or sexuality or anything in those spaces. We are talking about energy in its feminine form versus energy in its masculine form, and the divine feminine energy that's now awakening and what categorizes that and what that means. And also how through history that has been displayed or expressed and how it's going to be changing going forward. So that is how what we're talking about. Everyone is valid in their expression of the divine feminine. Everyone is, or their expression of the divine masculine. No matter what gender you are, you may lead with one or the other, and it might not immediately correlate to how you identify, and that's totally fine. So we're just talking about that in a very energetic sense. And I just want to make sure, because everyone is accepted here and beautiful and welcome.
And that's actually a conversation that's been going on in astrology, and I'm sure in other spheres as well, where signs are attributed their mode, their, is it cardinal? Is it mutable? Is it fixed? Is it, what element is it? Earth, air, water, fire. And then there's also the, oh my gosh, it's a gender, the binary of it, which is feminine or masculine. But a lot of the time we're like, do we really want to say feminine or masculine? Because the way we think about that today is not the essence of what it meant originally. So a lot of astrologers have been contemplating switching it over to like yin and yang, or, the like positive polarity. That's the word I was looking for before. Is it a positive polarity or a negative polarity? But then you're saying negative. And so one of the things that I like to really remind myself of that takes me back to the center and removes any kind of bias or unconscious triggering that might come from it, because it happens, right? I really like the expression of yin and yang, because they come together and make something whole and complete with their balance. And that is when I'm doing readings for people, especially after Venus retrograde, there was a lot of relationship questions and a lot of topics about relationships and significant others. And one of the things that I always like to stress is you are whole and complete. Simply in a relationship, you are finding another whole and complete individual that is fun to do things with, that is fun to live your life with, that is helping you express these themes and reflecting back to you things that are going on in your life. But you are both whole and complete. And that is such an important thing to understand, that we each are whole and complete in the fact that we have a balance of divine feminine and divine masculine. And sometimes those oscillate. As I'll kind of bring up as we talk about this with this really cool thing that happened in Egypt once.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And oftentimes, like, I tend to present with divine masculine first. That is the way I naturally default. I am super divine masculine energy when it comes to getting stuff done, the way I think, the way I function through things. And it has been a journey for me to honor the divine feminine side. Part of that is because of the society we grew up in. Part of that is because of my own lived life experience and trauma. And then part of that is just because my energy naturally gravitates towards that. And all of those things are they're totally fine. And other people might be the opposite, where it's hard for them to learn and lean into the divine masculine side. Because genuinely it can sometimes be a balance that's not necessarily very balanced. It could be really out of whack, which is definitely part of a healing shadow work journey a lot of the time.
Yeah, I felt the same way throughout my life because if you look at, I always take things back to astrology just because it's so nice and evidential, but my whole chart is ruled by Mars in the feminine sign of Mars. And my sun is ruled by Venus from Taurus. So, I have my moon in the first, and like, there's a lot of this way and that way. I was even born under a full moon. So this push and pull, the yin and yang, for Avatar fans, the Tui and La. It's so, I'm so glad you got that. It's really been
that's what
a
we
thing.
should call it, is Tui and La.
Tui and La.
I nominate you to push for that in the astrological community.
Would that be the Tui or the La? Should I tweet for that in the astrological community? Or is that the pull? Yeah. So it's something that we all go through because everybody has a birth chart, whether you were born under a full moon with a similar lineup to either of us or not, you have planets, or you have every sign in your chart, and each sign, they divvy up the masculine and the feminine alternating. So that is expressed in an area of your life. You have that balance. And in some areas, it's going to be more natural to express a divine feminine or a divine yang, or to express a divine masculine, the divine yin. And I'm actually going to Google and make sure I got those two correct. I think I did, but I always have to question myself on whether yin is masculine. I'm pretty sure it is, though.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Googling is fun. Good job.
You.
Yeah. No.
Oh wait, no. Yin is feminine. Yang is masculine. See, but good thing we looked it up.
So I'm gonna remember that, like yang like gong, which gong energy feels very masculine to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. I love analogies and mnemonic devices any day.
Yeah. So there you guys go. But absolutely. So we wanted to talk about the divine feminine energy this week, originally just because it had been something that had been coming up quite a bit with things in the media and in the news, also stuff I was diving into personally with my work on my new book. I had just finished reading a lot about how women have been portrayed throughout history and how women's roles were written into history. And so I really wanted to talk about the actual emergence of the divine feminine that we have coming up now. And of course, Krista was like, oh my gosh, that's everything I've just been reading, because she's been really working or reading a book by Dermitra George that is very aligned with that. Plus, we have these two beautiful astrological events coming up. So I wanted to make sure we started off talking about the full moon, though, because it is in Virgo, and it is actually in the night of the day that this comes out, which is super important. Even if you're listening to this after the fact, you still have the energy of the moon. You can still do stuff with it. I always want to highlight that for people. There's phases that are right around it that can still capitalize on the energy. So even if you're like, oh no, I missed it, you didn't miss it, you're fine. Just do this when you pay attention to it as this now comes for you, because it's all coming in your divine timing.
And the good news is this episode is airing the day before. So if you are catching our episode the day it airs, this very night is the one I would highly recommend, because not only are you within the degree of the full moon still being full, but this one takes place at 27 degrees 40 of Virgo. So it's not going to stay in Virgo super long. The next night it will be out of Virgo. So I prefer, you're still within range that it will work. So I wouldn't don't obsess over it like I do, but I obsess over things. So if you're very nitpicky like me, which is a very Virgo thing to do, is to be very detail oriented, then doing it the night of the 17th as we go into the 18th is primo, but the next night is fine. But yeah, so this is actually happening, and I always find this really funny, where it's about 3:18 a.m. on March 18th, which is 3:18.
3:18.
It's just really satisfying when stuff like that happens.
That's Eastern time for everybody listening.
Yes. Yeah. So I tend to calculate my my general charts for New York just because it's as general as I can make it. So yeah, that is for Eastern Daylight Time. I hope everybody had a graceful transition into daylight savings this past weekend, if that was something that your state or area of the world does. So what we're looking at with the full moon in Virgo, are we ready to really dive in?
Let's do it.
Awesome. And this is going to come back in our conversation later too, this whole Virgo and full moon thing, because it's just awesome synchronicity. So there's a little teaser for you. But as for the full moon itself, what we are looking at is the moon being in Virgo, in the later degrees of Virgo. And some things that are going on is, if you think about this, especially being the last full moon of the zodiacal year before we transition to the vernal equinox, which we will also talk about in this is really the time of clearing out, it's, if you want to go into a farm kind of terminology, because Virgo does rule agriculture and things, it's like you reap what's been out there, anything that's dried up and ready to be tilled, you till the soil, make it fertile, and then plant those new seeds for this beginning of a new zodiacal year. So this full moon in Virgo is really expressing that. It's this full light. You can almost compare a full moon to like a pregnancy, where we are full and ready to express, give birth, release of that kind of thing, because there has been this process leading up to it since the new moon. And so what we're looking at is, at the time, the moon is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is rules and is exalted in Virgo. At this time, Mercury is in fall in Pisces, conjunct Jupiter, who is actually really exalted in, not exalted, but domicile in Pisces. So there is that nice conjunction going on of this expansion really being more emphasized. And at the same time, Mercury is sextile Uranus and Taurus, creating this opportunity for change and changing the way that we indulge ourselves, changing the way that that we nurture ourselves in many ways. So we're expanding subtle ideas and connections, recognizing areas for expansion in our lives, recognizing areas where change is an opportunity, and we're looking into the future to see obstacles that are along the way. We are trying to organize and maybe systemize a little bit some of what we can see coming in the rest of this lunar cycle, but just in our immediate future. Like, what comes next, what's important, what has to get done in order for that to go well, and how can I visualize this and start getting things out of my way? That's the releasing that we're looking at. Look at how far you've come, look at how far you still want to go, and see how you can make that as efficient and smooth of a process as possible. During this, we also, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just keep thinking about this new moon as the coming out of hibernation feeling. Like, you're coming out of hibernation, you're like, wait a second, okay, I just hibernated, which means I just healed a bunch of stuff, because when you sleep, that's what you're doing, your body's healing itself, etc. So now it's like, okay, what is blocking me still creatively, or what things do I need to still navigate through, because I'm shaking off this long sleep that we've all gone through collectively, very much so, to come out into the spring sunshine.
Yeah. And I do want to acknowledge that those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're moving into spring. I'm super excited about that. For those in the Southern Hemisphere, you're moving into the fall, and there's still an energy of transition that goes along with that. So you can still absolutely apply this energy in the same way. What are you preparing for as you enter into the colder months of the year, the darker months of your year that you're preparing for as well? At the same time, we have Venus, who is still in Aquarius, finally getting a bit of distance from Mars. So we have this, as she's leaving Mars behind, she's approaching Saturn. So there's this tension of, like, wherever I go, I'm either going to be attacked or someone's going to throw restrictions on me. And at the same time, she is squaring Uranus, who is in her home sign of Taurus. So Uranus has been ransacking her house for like 4 years now, and she is feeling a little bit high strung in the position that she's in. So this is really bringing up too much change, too much overwhelm, surprising shifts in values or valuables, what we consider valuable. And the opportunity here is where you may be feeling kind of at the end of your rope with other people. This is an opportunity to hold boundaries, to remember that the things happening around you are simply a reflection of what's happening within you. So if you want to feel more in control, the good news is we're approaching Saturn with Venus here. So the idea of control and alignment and putting things in order is approaching. But as we separate from this Mars ambitious, kind of almost chaotic, aggressive energy, we can say, okay, that was a lot. And now I understand myself better. That was a lot. And now I know this is what I won't settle for less than. This is what I want or more than this, as you know, we would say in kind of like a manifesting technique. So Saturn is doing pretty well in Aquarius, but still it's very like what's fair, what's just, what's right. That combination with the more almost Libran side, it kind of brings out that air Venus, the Libra Venus. So we're looking at like, what is right? What is balanced? How can I find some balance in myself, which will then show up in my relationships as well. And we are experiencing this energy still of the sun having conjunct Neptune last Saturday as of the air date of this episode, which really dissolved a lot of barriers, dissolved a lot of lines, you know, definitions meant a little bit less in this energy. So we kind of dissolved our sense of individuality and faded into the whole collective conscious, faded into, if you're expressing this in a really high vibe way, it's a really great meditative state, a really great healing energy that we had. So we may have had the opportunity to really observe our place in the cosmos in a way. And now we're saying, okay, now that I'm coming back into my body a little bit here, which Virgo also is the comfort zone for the 6th house of physical health. So now that we're coming back into our body, I really do recommend doing like a body scan of yourself and just going from head to toe and saying, how does this feel? What does it need? How does this feel? What does it need? And taking care of yourself physically, because your physical self is a representation of the energy balance in your body, that balance that we were talking about of the yin and the yang. So it's important to make sure that you're checking your notifications as far as your body is concerned of where things may be too much energy, too much imbalance, or just right. Congratulate yourself for where things are just right. That is something that we don't do nearly enough. So similar to you, my interpretation of this was breathing life into things, kind of like sprouts pushing up through the snow. So your whole waking up from hibernation interpretation is very similar.
Yeah. I would also say too, when we ask you to scan your body, my guides just pinged me on this one, so we're going to talk about it. Do not use other people's voices to dictate how your body feels. That one is huge. The size of your body, the shape of your body, that has no bearing on what we're talking about here. Go through and see, does this feel healthy? Is it saying something? It needs something here. You know, it might be that like right now you're just really, really soul tired and you need a nap. That has nothing to do with, you know, physicality necessarily, but it is still taking care of your like physical health. So that's what we're referring to. So definitely don't fall into the trap of shitting all over yourself because you feel like something should be this way or should be that way. And that's the parts that you always zero in on. That's not what we're going for.
Yeah. Another technique to really help guide you along with this is to stick to words that are feelings. When you're doing a body scan, I saw a social media post on this today and it struck me. It was from a nutrition or a health coach saying, you don't feel fat, because fat isn't a feeling, it's a state. Or it's a thing that happens in your body and you don't feel the accumulation of that all at once. When you're feeling expansive, let's put it that way, and I feel this several times a week, I have to admit, it's not that you're feeling fat and getting down on yourself, you're feeling uncomfortable. And that may come from, you know, a little bit too much air in some places or whatever is going on, or you may be feeling self-conscious. So if you can say, I'm feeling uncomfortable, and then ask yourself why, you're going to get down to the real evidence there rather than the limiting belief of size being the end all be all, especially in that capacity, or of shape being the end all be all, you know, even of your nose. You know, like I'm feeling like I have an ugly nose. No, you're feeling self-conscious. No, you're feeling uncomfortable. Why are you feeling uncomfortable? And why does your nose have to take the blame for that? And who's telling you that your nose is the reason that you're feeling uncomfortable? What voice does that come up in? And if it does come up in a different voice, then you can honor that energy, pull limiting beliefs around that, or, you know, heal any kind of traumas or belief systems that are doing that. Virgo is also a very healing sign. So this is an excellent opportunity to be releasing criticism. Virgo gets a challenging reputation of being critical sometimes because it's so analytical, detail oriented. It's a mutable earth sign. So it can see all the things and it gets really earthy about them. It goes and drills in on it. So it's a very interesting combination, but it's also a very good teacher sign. I think that the Virgoan energy is such a great energy for teachers and mentors. So if you can take this energy of feeling like not enough and translate into mentoring yourself or helping yourself or others, that's a way to take this same potential and express it in a higher form.
And it's very divine feminine. Let's just put it that way too.
Yeah.
That is a very divine feminine energy space to be in, of this energy of criticism changing into mentorship. Very, very divine feminine. Also, I can take criticism really, really well when it comes to my creative works, when it comes to different things I've built, you name it. But when it comes to like myself, the way I do things, I like completely shut down. So this is always a big challenge for me. And so anyone out there who's like, great, taking criticism, turning into mentorship sounds impossible. I get it. It does sound impossible in some ways, but it definitely is tangible and possible. And just take it in little tiny baby steps. It doesn't have to be every criticism you've ever gotten of yourself for the entirety of your entire life. Just take it in little tiny steps. And also, especially, we're doing this with the way you're criticizing yourself, not the way others are criticizing you. So
yeah, because the way others are criticizing you is just a reflection of things that may already be going on within you. So you have ultimate control over that, which is the bright side of an uncomfortable situation is you still have the control. It's just a matter of separating yourself from whatever that situation is, so that you can get back into your space, back into your center, and take. I like I'm getting a ping right now about the difference between expression and suppression. So when you express your divine feminine, you end up standing in your power or even sitting in your power and really expressing these things. I think we talked a couple episodes about the Egyptian goddess Mut, which is a similar expression to the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet. Sekhmet is standing in her power, and somewhat Plutonian, can be destructive and, destroying things in order to cause rebirth. Which is another thing that is very divine feminine, believe it or not. Mut is sitting in her power, has nothing to prove, knows her worth, and is not rising to any sort of instigation, right? So you have that same person, but one is undaunted and the other one is like, this is enough. And this is where we draw a line and we create space for something new. And again, I'm going to recommend to everybody, I'm going to show you the cover and everything. It's Mysteries of the Dark Moon by Demetra George. Here's her name, so you can spell it. I know it's probably going to be backwards on the video, but this book
it's right way.
Yay. This book is everything. It has really helped me understand the cycles of divine feminine, the expression of divine feminine, the true history behind what we've kind of understood up until this point. It kind of reveals a lot of what's been forgotten and untapped for a while. So it's been very helpful to really realize that. For anybody who's interested, also, the affirmation that I came up with for this full moon was, I release the old and breathe life into the new, which again is very much allowing the destruction of something old, reaping pulling the weeds so that something can grow. That in and of itself is destroying something so that the new space is there for new birth. It's the new birth, the part we always forget. I talk with my parents, they're reading Course in Miracles right now, and I've read that before too. And one of the concepts in the Course in Miracles is that people who follow a Christian lifestyle end up getting so focused on the sacrifice and the tribulation and the crucifixion. They're so busy walking the path to the cross that they forget about the resurrection. And the resurrection was the point. So instead of living in the path to the cross where it ends in death, if you could live in the resurrection, that rebirth energy, you'd be able to find a lot more meaning, a lot more, opportunity to expand.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I mean, I've been doing tons of obviously research into ancient Rome, which I've talked a lot about, and like right at the same period of time that Jesus was crucified. And it's been really interesting to see it from the like entirely secular perspective of that. And I think if more people did research into that side of it versus the like religious context, you would live a lot more in the rebirth space. So that would be my recommendation, is if you're deconstructing, look up stuff like that. It will definitely help a lot. As I am actively deconstructing in a lot of ways. We wanted to talk about too, especially in relation to the book Krista's reading, because it really is so on point. We are genuinely entering into a phase of the reemergence of the divine feminine as the leading like planetary energy that we're all expressing through. So regardless of our own personal balances, we're all starting to express through the divine feminine. We are ushering in a more divine feminine time, which is where the planet vibration is actually raising. We've talked to this before, but also it is an expression of ending old cycles, again, that like finishing out, destroying things in order to make way for that rebirth space, which is genuinely where we are. And Krista, I know, has some data on that from this book, but even just me tuning into the energy, like can see it, feel it. My guides have said it repeatedly. And it's been really intriguing, especially during this time, to be reading about the way women have been portrayed throughout history because they've been written by men. And the imbalance there, and then knowing we're moving into a more, divine feminine led space so that more equal expression can come through in the way that we write our histories. And I'm really excited and intrigued about that. So,
yeah. And there is even a line in this book that I thought was really great where they talk about how we were in a divine, she calls it lunar, where they worshiped primarily a goddess energy. Mm-hmm. And how that was the way for an estimated 40,000 years. And then it transitioned in just like a new moon cycle, transitioned into a new cycle. And so the cool thing is, though, she posits that we moved into a divine solar masculine cycle so that we understood wholly and completely the feminine. Then we spend some time understanding wholly and completely the masculine to the extreme, one way and the other. And now with this reemergence of the feminine, it's about finding the balance. It's about bringing that yin and yang into balance. So it may be a challenge, but this isn't something to form a resentment against. It's just acknowledging that we are in the period of the cycle where balance is being distinguished and found. So that's really cool. And what an honor to be alive at this time, right? So the concept that begins this book, and I do want to cover it just a really little bit, is that she broke the history of humanity into phases and compared them to our lunar phases. So the way it's a very much as above, so below kind of concept, where if the moon is going through these phases, is there a macro version of that we can compare it to? And can we see that in the way things have worked throughout human history? So just really quickly, you do have the new moon phase, which goes into crescent, into first quarter, into gibbous, into full, disseminating, last quarter, balsamic, and then back to new. That's the cycle. So what happened was in this, it was discovered that if you think of different, she goes into Neolithic and the Bronze Age and all of these things, lots of data to dive into in this book, but it culminates in a 40,000 year cycle of the phases of that lunar energy in our history, one of which we are emerging back out of right now. That's where the rise of the feminine is coming from in this concept. And one of the ways that you can track it is the especially relevant as we're coming up onto the vernal equinox is the precession of equinoxes. And I just, again, like who knew that we were going to decide to do this now? But the precession, right? The precession of equinoxes is actually just the wobble of the earth and the way it aligns with the zodiac, which is established by the ecliptic, which is just that line in the sky that the sun and the stars and everything, or the sun and the planets, the stars that move along. So you'll notice it's not the sun just over here and over here and over here and over here. The sun does this arc throughout the year. That arc is what is distinguished as the ecliptic. And the planets, because they're going around the sun, move within the realm of that space as well. That's why we defined the 12 signs of the zodiac. They're based on that ring around Earth. So like astrology FAQ for you there, because that's definitely a frequently asked question. But the cool thing was we had originally, or, in 5400 BC, we would have been in the age of Taurus. And at this time, the star that was being focused on, and it's one page away, but I'm going to fuss around with the pages, of course, I believe was Alpha Centauri. And then you moved on to, well, at the time, the cool thing was there was a lot of depictions of bulls and cows and the sacredness of that animal, of that expression in culture, in Neolithic eras, on cave paintings and things like that. Then it moved into the cult of the ram, and there was a lot of war going on, a lot of territory being claimed and drawn, and all of those things. Cult of the ram, age of Aries, Mars ruled, right? Then we moved into the cult of the fish, or the Pisces age, which was actually heralded around the time again of Jesus. So someone coming around saying, hey, new way of living. Let's try loving each other. Or let's try healing ourselves. Let's try this peace thing. And of course, that's Pisces, right? And now we're coming into, at this time, in, give or take a century or two, we're coming into the age of Aquarius, the age of equality and all of those things, this reemergence of a divine feminine going along with it, even though Aquarius is itself more of a young sign. So we're coming into like, can we all just get along kind of thing? Like from a practical standpoint, can we get along? Can we do this from an ideological standpoint? And that's where we're at.
That's also where you're seeing a lot of deconstruction of systems that were built to be oppressive. That's where that's coming in. So for those of you like, of course we all want to get along, but there's still so many problems. Yeah. That's why they're all coming to the surface right now. That's why these systems and structures that have been built on the backs of oppression or being limiting to certain groups of people versus other ones are coming into the light and getting challenged actively, because that, with those in place, we can't just all get along. That's not how that works. So that's that breaking, that's the segment. That's like, we're going to kick the teeth in on all this stuff so that we can move to the moot. Like this is, we can sit in our power collectively. And so when you're feeling that right now, it is actually an active expression of the divine feminine being like, this can't exist if we're all going to get along. So that needs to go. And there's people that, of course, are going to feel triggered by that and throw themselves against that and say, no, this is my structure. And I love it because it's the comfortable place that I've always lived in. And you can't take that from me. And then there's going to be a lot of other people that are like, nah, it doesn't matter. That's garbage. And that's not how this works, because that's not how that works. And those things are going to dissolve as needed, because we cannot move into this stage and still keep people in such an oppressed place.
Yeah. And that again is the difference, I think, back to the difference between suppression and expression, because this energy that has been suppressed for a long time, we've been sitting, but not in our power. And now we're standing up and saying, hey, I just need to be recognized really quick. And then I'll sit back down once I've been recognized, once that's integrated and once that's understood. But right now we're in a place of, let me stand up so we don't forget that this is a topic that still needs to be addressed. And that's happening in a lot of genres of culture right now. It's not just the feminine, but definitely something that's happening right now where it's like, hey, by the way, we need this balance. This is a world of so many things, so much diversity, and all of it makes it perfect and beautiful. And we would have a lot more fun. We would all have a lot more peace if we all could have a seat at the table. So I'm not going to sit down until that seat's there. Can someone help me pull up a chair?
Yeah, absolutely. The other cool synchronicity that happened when we decided we were going to do an episode on this is we both ended up watching Seeing Red, and it just related to so many of these. Or Turning Red?
Yeah,
Turning Red.
I think it's Turning Red.
I think it's Turning Red too. It's the new Pixar movie. Also, I just want to highlight the first review I saw of this movie was from a cisgendered white man. And he literally verbatim said, I couldn't see myself in it, and therefore it's 2 stars, which like, what the fuck?
Yeah. There was also one
genuinely like, dude, come on. There's so many times that we don't see ourselves in films, and that does not negate their ability to teach and heal others. Anyway, that was my ticked off moment.
That was the first one that I saw too. And then a second one, and I was, it actually made me want to watch it more. Because for once, it doesn't take place in America, it like takes place in Canada. But it's just refreshing in a way to see that. But also a second review that I saw said that there were too many turbans and that was not actually expressive of the reality in the area. And in my head, I was like, all right, let's see if they tried to overcompensate or something. Like, what's causing this reviewer to feel this way? I watched, and literally it was 2 side background characters that were wearing headpieces or head garments of some form. 2.
They were
3 times on scene because one was the same person. One person showed up twice. So there is a discomfort that goes along with feeling out of your element. I remember my first mission trip was to Trinidad when I was 13. Not to Trinidad, it was to Jamaica. And my mom actually made a big deal. She was like, you're going here because we're going to start getting you some perspective on the world. You need to understand the world out there. And so I was the only one that looked like me for a lot, like as far as my eye could see, right? And I was noticed for that. And there was a certain level of discomfort that came along with it, but it was so cool to be held in that space and to be in that discomfort and navigate it, and then have the rest of my life to be like, yeah, it's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes. It's okay not to be the one who has all of the resources.
Right.
And like, it's something to learn, and it is definitely disorienting, and it takes some time to get both of your feet planted on the ground and figure out how to navigate that situation. But the good news is it's totally navigable. And it is kind of like a hospitality, divine feminine, or I think we decided that was yin expression. And one of the things I really loved about Turning Red, though, my favorite thing that also shows up in Demetra George's book, but that we were discussing before this recording, was the archetypal expression of the maiden, the mother, and the crone, and the transitions from those phases, which shows up a ton. And I mean, look at the cover of the book. What do you think it's about? So
those of you who are just listening on like Spotify or something, check it out on YouTube. You can see it.
Yeah. So so it's basically, it's a woman lying on her side, but the woman is expressed in a very abstract art style, and she is in all of her womanly glory. We'll put it that way. You can look up the book, buy the book. Yeah. But in, laying in her power, so to speak.
What I want to say too is it is so important. I love that you touched on the fact of like being uncomfortable, but like that is why we need to emphasize marginalized voices. That is why we need to highlight so many areas of the world, is because so many people just want to keep their blinders on to sit in the space where they are the most comfortable and they are the most seen, and it's just there, and that is inherently not okay. Accepting the world, which is also why those reviews were so painful and not all right, because like this is talking about a culture and maybe peoples that you have never really interacted with before. All the more reason to sit back and watch and listen, because it's not yours.
Also, I apologize if anybody's hearing my dog barking in the background. Snow melted off of our roof and Jack just cannot handle it. So cameo appearance from Jack.
Snow.
I know. Hey, I'm on board. Let's get this spring stuff going, because I'm okay without the snow. But he's just going at it up there. So
so expressing the mother, maiden, crone archetype is really interesting too. And I want to talk just briefly about how women have been written throughout history in kind of alignment with that, especially with the research I've been doing about ancient Rome. Like, women are not mentioned by any of the like source material, essentially, unless they are taught in relation to how they supported the men. So whether they are, sorry to be kind of like crass, but whether they're described as like whores and all these horrible manipulative women, whether it's like this manipulative, demonish, like she destroyed her husband's life kind of energy, or she was such a dutiful, wonderful, Augusta like person that was like this wonderful, pacified empress. But that's like extensively the amount that you get in context, and that is kind of following along with the mother, maiden, crone kind of energy as well. Maiden, it's usually like, oh, sweet thing, she's so beautiful, like, precious little flower to protect, till the second she becomes into like grows into more of a womanly space, and then she's this vile, manipulative, like horrible being. And even if those of you who maybe have never done any research on femininity throughout history, if you've read the Bible or anything like that, you can see this acted out. Some women are just these precious, beautiful flowers because they never did anything to piss off a man. Some women are like these horrible people because they had some agency over their life. And then they enter into the crone space, where it's like, oh, she's, my mother and revered because she's this elderly woman. And it's all in relation to how the men have chosen to describe them and depict them, which is not the case in like a lot of the ancient myths, which we're going to talk about one of them right now. But it wasn't initially written in that. It was written in more of a feminine powering space, and it has been mutated over the years to fit the narrative of the divine, not less than divine masculine space of, dictating everyone's narrative constantly anyway. So I just thought it was really fascinating. And then we watched Turning Red, and it is illustrating these concepts without the overtones of the masculine energy, like sweeping it under the rug and describing it. It's very, very divine feminine. It's very female realizing itself, and it's freaking beautiful.
Well, and even the roles of a lot of the masculine characters in it, they were totally fine. They were balanced. They were amazing. One of them, who was sort of antagonist, but then like best friend by the end. And that's not really giving too much away. Like, just watch it and you'll see what I'm talking about. I thought it was a really great expression of the blend. I have my own theories about that character's, remainder of their storyline, but it's just really cool to see how each character was able to forgive so well, which is another, it's definitely a divine, I'm going to put it on the yang side. On the yin side, the divine yin expression of being able to acknowledge something, forgive it, but then change. That's the rebirth. That change is the rebirth. The forgiveness is the healing that happens after the death cycle. Then you have the healing, which leads into the rebirth, which is such an important thing. Again, we see this in a new moon, right? The moon disappears and it goes into darkness for a while, and then it reemerges. So when you have that waning crescent to new moon to waxing crescent, it's this time of fading, being reborn, and healing, and being in stillness, and then reemerging with new life. That happens in everything we see. So that is, again, when you think about Pluto or Sekhmet, or even when we're talking about, Pluto plays a role in this Persephone myth, Hades, or whichever way you want to express him. That is what we're talking about when we come into this death and rebirth. Please focus on the and rebirth.
Yeah, so since it's the vernal equinox, so the spring equinox, or in the southern hemisphere, the fall equinox, we wanted to talk about the Persephone myth, because that really is the mother, maiden, crone rebirth cycle, like personified into mythology, which is really amazing. So just a really brief description if you're not familiar with the myth. First of all, right now it is a huge trend in fiction retellings to retell the Persephone Hades myth. I wonder
why, since Venus is conjunct Pluto, or was just recently.
I haven't found one that I like, to be totally honest. I've read a lot of them, and they all tend to like not quite feel very high vibration. So there's not one that I'm particularly recommending. But essentially the idea is Persephone is the goddess of spring. She is a lot younger than all of the other gods and goddesses. She is Demeter's daughter. So she makes pretty flowers bloom. She ends up kind of getting taken by Hades. He was, if she didn't eat anything, she would be able to leave the underworld freely. She ate 3 pomegranate seeds, meaning she has to stay in the underworld for 3 months and kind of be his wife and bride and whatever. And then she gets to come back with spring. So that is the months of winter, is when Persephone is in the underworld. And then when she comes back, she brings spring, and then leads into Demeter's season, her mother's season. So she is the goddess of the harvest and agriculture and all of that. So that's like a really, really brief explanation of the myth for those of you who might not be super familiar.
Well, and it's also kind of important to also say of Demeter that she and Persephone were like an inseparable mother-daughter dynamic. And so nature thrived before this, and like there was always bountiful harvests and everything was great. And then one day Persephone went off on her own. And that's when she was abducted and corrupted, shall we say, by Pluto. There was this separation of the daughter and the mother, which is another theme that gets really explored well in Turning Red. And so the mother transitions, no longer being the mother, because the daughter is transitioning from maiden to a mother sort of time in her own life. The mother then, Demeter, goes through this mourning and this angst of, I've lost this part of my life, my daughter, but also this part of my life of me. And so everything falls to no harvest, nothing, like barren lands. And the gods actually said, hey, we need to get Demeter creating food again, or everyone's going to perish. And it was actually Hecate that told Demeter where she might look to go find Persephone. And Hecate is of the crossroads. That's one of the expressions that Hecate helps with. So again, Demeter was at this crossroads in her life and then went to rediscover Persephone as this mother archetype, and then had to rediscover herself going into the crone archetype, transitioning from one phase of life to another. And the one thing that I really acknowledge is how much we've praised the maiden and kind of let fall away the mother, and then really don't appreciate the crone. The crone is the wisdom keeper and the source, like the encyclopedia, so to speak, having lived the experience and maintaining it to be able to pass on. The mother is we'll say like standing in her power, getting things done, creating change.
I was just going to say, she's the energy of creation, which we have let slide as almost like she's the energy of serving me. You know, like that's how a lot of the mother is perceived in society now, is like, oh, they're there to serve their children, they're there to like be productive, that kind of energy, which is not the energy of the mother. That is very underappreciated, and that is why so many like stay-at-home moms and stuff don't feel valued the way that they should, because they should be, even if you're not a mother yet, but you're in that stage of your life where you're in the space of not being a maiden anymore, and obviously not being a crone. You're in that mother stage as far as an archetype goes, where you are creating, where you are moving forward that way, and it should be far more appreciated. And same with the crone. Absolutely. The crone has lived the wisdom and everything. And then the maiden tends to be it's a horrible way of putting it, but the best way I've got, almost like over sexualized or fantasized, of like this like pretty maiden beautiful energy that's just there to kind of make everybody feel good. That's not the case either. I also just want to highlight in the Persephone myth, the part of the myth that I've always taken a little bit of a at is the Persephone energy of her being like taken by Hades and, you know, captured, and then he keeps her trapped and whatever. I kind of would like to say that I feel like that is a very I don't think how that myth was originally enacted occurred that way. I think it was her standing in her own power and being like, I'm going to go explore here, exploring there, and then deciding, oh, okay, well, this is aligned with me, I would like to come here again, and choosing that option, because I feel like it takes away so much of her agency to be like, he did it, and then she's not trapped in winter. There is nothing. I have channeled Persephone before, I have channeled Demeter before, and I have channeled Hades / Pluto before. None of that energy is there. Zero. And I do not see that being how it was actually done. So that's just my 2 cents on the topic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's actually explored in depth in the Mysteries of the Dark Moon book. They explore the way that we commonly understand the story and the way that it probably originated, with context, with evidence to go along with that. Good. And just really goes into it very deeply. It's amazing. There's entire chapters dedicated to it because it can go so deep. It's awesome. Like I wish we had more time to be able to jump into this. But speaking really quickly on the equinox that we are experiencing, now that we've talked about the energy that goes along with it, one of the interpretations that I'm seeing, and there are more transits that go along with this week, you guys, but this is an episode where we really needed to focus on this divine feminine, this divine yin energy. And I do have an astrological overview for the month of March on the Alchemists Inkwell YouTube channel. You can go there to see all the other transits that are going on. You can also see them on my TikTok at The Real KristaLyn, and Emily always does a weekly energy forecast as well at Liker of Words. So there's plenty of context for guiding your daily life this week. For the equinox, as we are, it is basically the zodiacal new year. This is the new year as far as astrology is concerned. So in this new year, we're coming up with ambition, energy to initiate. Jupiter is still conjunct Mercury. It is on the 20th, so it's only a couple days after that full moon. So we have this expansive wanting to express ourselves, wanting to make connections, wanting to go deeper in our psyches. I think that's going to be a very big theme of this year, is the expansion, the initiative that we take is going to be healing ourselves, nurturing ourselves, and really reemerging as this almost light body version of ourselves in the world. We're finally being able to step out where we couldn't for like 2 years. And we're saying, I want this to be my first day of school. I don't want to come back the way I was, you know? So that's always my best Plutonian rebirth archetype, is the first day of school, because you can just decide you're someone new and you just do it. And it's fantastic that way. Mars and Venus are still tangoing in a square with Uranus. So it's a season of compromising, changing to fit your long-term goals. And these are aligned changes. It's aligned action. We're starting new cycles, generating new perspectives, taking initiative towards passions, letting our heart drive us, which is, you know, they have the distinguish between following your head and following your heart. There is a balance in both, but following your heart and your intuition and your guidance, that's very Piscean. So I would say that this is something that is going to be emerging. We're revisioning our plans, revising our plans for our futures now, saying the old stuff is gone. That's not coming back. What do I want now? Who am I now? What's important to me now? What am I beginning to take tangible steps towards in large scale goals? How am I maintaining a clear image of my success in order to inform all the steps that come in between? And I suggest applying this by making your plans, like literally come up with your New Year's resolutions, so to speak, for the coming months, for the next 12 months. Do some spring cleaning, clear out the space, get rid of anything that doesn't serve you, anything that's old and it no longer needs to be there. That's the reaping side. Oh, geez, Jack's down here now. Hey, everybody, that's my dog, Jack. And so he is also clearing the space. Loud noises, that's why people clap sometimes, will clear energy in spaces. So my room is totally cleansed now.
Yeah. Singing, all of that. Yeah, it's going to be a really cool energy. I always recommend to journal about your dreams over the equinox or the solstice. Always pay attention to your dream space. Any dreams, even if they don't feel like they matter, just write them down. You never know how they're going to matter.
Yep.
And with the veil thinning on the equinox and solstice space, it's always really important. So I just like always highlight that in the biggest way possible of like, hey, just pay attention to your dreams. It's valuable and you will find value in it. So like Krista said, on our YouTube, we have she did a huge breakdown of all the astrology. If you want to go deeper into that, that is the perfect place to look. But yeah, this episode has been really fun and we're almost out of time. So I want to make sure that we honor that. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Any questions that you have, or if there's any topics more specifically you would like us to chat on in this space or other spaces, if you're like, oh, do an episode about the divine masculine now, I don't know, whatever you want, go ahead and comment that on our YouTube, or you can shoot us an email at forgottenstorytellers@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Genuinely, it's awesome.
Yeah, and please don't think that anything's off the table. We accept all questions openly and without prejudice and without discrimination or without, judgment. So we are totally willing to explore facets that you think are either underserved or even just ones that you would like more information on and really can't find that information elsewhere, or would just like our perspective on. Really quickly, as we end this episode, an affirmation for going into this new zodiacal year I borrowed from Winnie the Pooh. And it is, I'm stronger than I feel, smarter than I think, and braver than I believe. Please keep that in mind. Yeah.
He's my favorite. I have a bunch of bee tattoos because I love Winnie the Pooh. One other thing I would like to say, Krista and I are actually going to be doing a live recording of our podcast at the Women's Indie Podcast Summit on the 26th. Yeah. It's that 26th of March. Okay. I was like, Saturday. It's the last Saturday in March, and we are really excited about it. Tickets are on sale now. If you want to be a part of that, we would love to see you there. So go ahead and check that out. Again, that's the Women's Indie Podcast Summit. And until then, or until the next episode, we hope that you all go make some magic. Yeah.
It never gets old when we get it right.